Bismillah, alhamdulillah. As-salatu was-salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In today's lesson, we will learn about the articulation points of Arabic letter, which is called Makharijul Huroof. Makharij is a plural of the word makhraj, which is an articulation point of Arabic letters. The study of Makharijul Huruf, or the articulation points of Arabic letter, is so important that everything you are going to learn in Tajweed based on the Makharijul Huruf, as long as you are saying and reciting the letters properly, this will act as a building block for your Tajweed lessons, which are coming after that, inshallah. There are 29 letters. If you consider alif mad a separate letter, when you are lengthening or stretching alif, then you have 29 Arabic letters. And all of them are written over here. Some of them I have mentioned as H on the top, and some of them does not have anything on the top, and some of them have H/L. In the Arabic letters, some of the letters are heavy, or you can call them full mouth letters, and you have to keep your back of the tongue up for those letters. Those letters are heavy and should remain heavy in all conditions. Sometimes their heaviness is less than the other cases. So we will discuss those places, inshallah, in our Tajweed lessons. The letters without anything on the top, all these letters are light letters, and the light letters are pronounced with a thin sound without making your back of the tongue up or elevated. Some of the letters like Ra and Lam, these letters are considered as light letters, but due to some conditions, some of the times we have to pronounce these two letters heavy. For the alif mad, the mad which is a lengthening letter, it depends on the letter coming before that letter if we need to make it heavy or light. That's why for these three letters, I wrote H for heavy, L for light, because sometimes they're heavy, sometimes they are light. For all the heavy letters, you will find H sign on the top, and you can say these heavy letters in one statement, which is and dha. So these are all heavy letters, which will remain heavy all the time. And rest of the letters are light letters. So light letters are pronounced with the sound of a, ba, ta, sa, like this. It's just a tip for you to remember. It's not a rule. If this helps you, alhamdulillah. The word apple, when you say apple, we don't call it apple. We don't call it apple. So the sound a in apple, give that sound when you are saying these light letters. So if we take the example of letter ba, so we don't call it ba, or we don't call it be. If we call it with the proper way, the sound will be ba, like an a in apple. So all of these light letters, a, ba, ta, sa, ja, ha. So when I put fatha over there, the sound will be ja, ha. But the name of the letter is jeen, ha. Now this is a heavy letter. So what is the sound and what is the tip for heavy letters? So for heavy letters, remember the word awesome and try to say these letters with a tone of awe in awesome. So instead of saying ha, you say ho, just like awe, awesome. We have to give the same tone to ho. Then come to this one, sod, and we will say sod, dod, ta, dha, qaf, ghoin. So this one, ghoin, the name of the letter is ghoin. But if you have to give a heavy sound with a fatha on it, you will say gho instead of saying ga, or instead of saying ge. You have to make it heavy. So light letters, just a tip, remember an apple sound. You have to say them on apple sound. And for heavy letters, remember the tip awesome and say them on awesome sound. So let's suppose letter dal. The name of the letter is dal, but when you are giving the sound of an apple sound with a fatha, you will say da, not the, not they, like this. So scholars have made 4 main categories of vocal organs from where the sound is originating. The first one is al-jawf. So jawf is an empty space in our throat and in our mouth. So some letters are coming from jawf, some are coming from al-halq. Al-halq is the throat. Al-fam, some of them are coming from the mouth, and mouth consists of teeth and lips and the palate, the soft, the hard palate. So some letters are coming from these places. Two letters actually, they use al-khayshum, the nasal passage, which helps them to give the makharij of those letters very well. So inshallah, we will discuss them in details. A tip for you to remember is, if you want to try to find the makharij of a letter and you don't know what exactly is that, so try to remember this tip. Just put the sukoon on the letter. So let's suppose in this case, sin and a dal and ba with a sakin sign or the jazm sign on the top. So what are you going to do? So you put a fatha before it, or a dhamma or a kasra before it, and try to read it. So I will read this example and I will not do qalqala or bounce on this letter, just to show you hamza, fatha, and ba sukoon. Ab. I'm using my lips. So the ba is coming from my lips. So this is an easy way for you to find where the letters are coming from. So it's just a tip for you to remember if you don't know what exactly is the makharaj. So you try and practice with these examples and try to find them out, where the letter is coming from and how am I going to pronounce them. So inshallah, we will begin with al-jawf. Al-jawf is an empty space in the mouth and throat. There are three letters which are coming from al-jawf. All of three are mad letters. Mad letters are the lengthening letters. Sometimes we have to stretch something, we have to lengthen something when we are reciting. Those letters are jawf letters, mad letters. And when do they become a mad letter? When you put a sukoon on them, when they are sakin, they have no vowel on them, and before those letters you find a vowel which is compatible to their sound. Or in an easy way, you can call the letters and they come with their friend. Alif is a friend with fatha because alif has a sound of a. So a, the sound compatible to a is fatha. So this sound is compatible to alif. So fatha is compatible to alif. So alif is a friend with fatha. So alif is in a mad condition. So ya is having a kasra before it. Kasra is compatible to a ya. So ya is friend with kasra. And when they are together like this, when ya is sakin, there is no vowel, no fatha dhamma kasra on it. It is sakin without any vowel, with a kasra before it. This is in a mad condition. When waw is sakin, it does not have any vowel. Dhamma is an oo sound. When it comes with a waw, they are both compatible to each other. Now waw is in a mad condition. So the sound a, e, oo, these are the sounds which are coming from the empty space of mouth and throat, and this is called al-jawf. These three mad letters are coming from al-jawf. We'll take some examples here. So in this case, ba-u, ba, alif mad, it is in the mad condition because there is fatha before it. Ja'a, jim having fatha, and right after fatha there is alif. So now this alif is in a mad condition, we'll say ja. So this a sound is coming from al-jawf. Qala, so I'll stretch the sound qa, just to exaggerate and just to show you. So this sound is heavy because the qaf is a heavy letter. So the sound of alif mad will become heavy, and this sound is coming from al-jawf. Ya in a mad condition like qila, qila. See, qi, this e sound, it's coming from al-jawf. It does not have a specific organ. We just call it empty space of mouth and throat. In the same way, we'll say alimun, li. So this stretching, the ya mad, when we are stretching it, this is coming from empty space of mouth and throat. Kabi, see, kabi. I'm just exaggerating and showing you this e sound is coming from al-jawf. Kabirun. So kabi, b, this b, the mad, al-ya mad is coming from al-jawf. Kabirun. So I will say the ya mad, which I'm saying just to stretch the ba having kasra, is coming from al-jawf. The same way, waw, when it comes in a mad condition, it's coming from al-jawf. Ooh, so I'm stretching the sound. Ooh. So this sound, ooh sound, is coming from al-jawf. Turi, suburan. أعوذ. أعو. This أعو, the stretching of أعو is coming from al-jawf because waw is a mud letter here, and I am saying this mud letter from the jawf, the empty space of mouth and throat. What are the letters of al-halq? Halq is the throat. So there are 6 letters that are coming from the throat, and those 6 letters are hamza ha, ain ha, oin ha. So out of these 6 letters, the top of the throat is giving us oin and ha. And these 2 letters are heavy letters. So the top of the throat, we have oin ha. Middle of the throat is coming ain ha. Bottom of the throat is coming hamza ha. We will try to say how to pronounce them. Try to put sukoon on the letters and fatha before it. So we'll say aw, aw. So ghain is coming from the closest part of the throat, which is closest to the mouth. And it is coming from the root of the tongue plus the soft palate. And while giving the ghain, we will make our back of the tongue elevated. The same way, ha, ah, ah. So the ha is coming from the same place, the closest part of the throat, closest to the mouth with the root of the tongue plus the soft palate. And while giving ha, you have to remember that you keep your back of the tongue up. This comes from the top of the throat. Both of them are heavy letters. Middle of the throat is giving us a ain and ha. Let's try to practice them. Ah, 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 like this. You don't make your back of the tongue up because these are light letters. And for ain and ha, because they're coming from the middle of the throat, the makharij, exact makharij is our epiglottis plus back wall of the throat for these 2 letters. And we don't make our back of the tongue up. So for ha, it's just a tip for you to remember as if you're checking your breath. So we say ha, ha. We don't say ha when you're checking your breath. So we say ha. See, in this case, we'll say ah, ain with the middle of the throat, ah, like this. Now, bottom of the throat, hamza and ha. So these 2 letters come from 2 vocal cords. And it is the deepest part of the throat, which is closest to our chest. It is coming from there. And we will say ah, 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 ah. So this sound is different. Ha sound is different from ha. So in the case of ha, which is coming from the middle of the throat, the sound is ah. In case of ha, we say ah, like this. So we'll try to practice some words and try to see how does these letters sound. So we will say a'udhu, khashiya, maghdubi, hudiya, su'ila, alhamdu. So we'll try to practice these letters with these examples, and inshallah we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us. Now we will look into the letters which are coming from the mouth, the tongue, the palate, the teeth, the 2 lips, and the tongue. Actually, the tongue has most of the letters coming from 10 articulation points. Why 18 letters and 10 articulation points? Because some of the letters share the same makhraj. That's why we have 18 letters but 10 exit points. From the deepest part of the tongue comes qaf and kaf. From the middle of the tongue comes jim and ya and sheen. From the sides of the tongue comes dad and lam. From the tip of the tongue comes all these letters. Noon and ra and ta, dal, qa, sin, za, sad, dal, dha, and tha. Lam also use a bit of the tip of the tongue. So we, inshallah, are going to study all of them from where exactly they are coming from and how do we pronounce them. So from the deepest part of the tongue comes 2 letters. The first one is the qaf and the second one is kaf. So the sound of the first letter, the name of the first letter is qaf. And well, let's try to find out the makharaj. Aqo, aqo. So if I do it without bounce, the sound will be aqo, aqo, like this. Where exactly this is coming from? From the deepest part of the tongue plus the soft palate. But because qaf is a heavy letter, we will keep our back of the tongue elevated. Let's practice some examples here. Udiya, Qu, qu. Don't say ku. This is not qaf. This is kaf. Don't say ku. Say qu, qu. Qudiya, ufuqi, ufuqi. Don't say ki, ufuqi. This is kaf. We need qaf here. Ufuqi, khuliqa, khuliqu is heavy as well. So khuliqa, we make sure that we give the qaf and kha with the back of the tongue up. Kaf also comes with the deepest part of the tongue, but along with soft palate, we are also using hard palate to say the letter kaf. So we say ak, ak. Let's try to practice letter kaf. Don't say cough, don't say kaf, say kaf, kaf, cough, kaf, cough, kaf. So kaf is coming from the deepest part of the tongue plus the area of the soft and hard palate. And if you're trying to coming from the bottom of the throat towards the lips. So you're starting from the bottom of the throat. So hamza ha, the middle of the throat, ain ha, top of the throat, ghain ha. So next letter that comes after ghain ha is qaf. And then kaf comes. So first qaf, then kaf. Kaf is slightly after qaf. So if you start your articulation point from your lips, so kaf comes first and then comes qaf. If you start your articulation point from the bottom of the throat, so qaf comes first and then kaf. So let's practice some examples. Dhukira, don't say dhuqi, this is qaf. Dhukira, kutiba. So remember, kaf, not a qaf. So we have to say ku, ku. Don't say ku. This is qaf. Don't make your back of the tongue up. Kutiba, khalaqaka. No, both of them are coming. Qa, ka. Don't say ka, ka. Don't say qa, qa. You have to make the qaf, the first one, with the back of the tongue up, and the second one with the back of the tongue down. Khalaqaka, khalaqaka, like this. Then comes the middle of the tongue. Middle of the tongue gives us the makharij of 3 letters, jeen, ya, and sheen. The name of the letters are jeen, ya, and sheen. This ya is not a mad ya. The ya which is in a mad condition that we have already discussed, this ya is not in that condition. This ya is when the ya is having fatha dhamma or kasra, or ya is having a sukoon, but before that there is fatha or dhamma. We are talking about that ya which comes from the middle of the tongue. All these letters comes from the middle of the tongue, but the only difference is in case of jeen, so our middle of the tongue is touching what is opposite in the roof of the mouth. But in case of ya and sheen, middle of the tongue plus what is opposite in the roof of the mouth, but they are not touching. Middle of the tongue is not touching what is opposite in the roof of the mouth. So if you are touching middle of the tongue with the roof of the mouth, then you are giving jeen. Otherwise, you are giving ya and sheen. Let's practice them. Aj, aj. See, you're using your middle of the tongue. Aj, ay, ash, ash. So there is gap when you are saying ya and sheen in what? Middle of the tongue plus what is opposite in the roof of the mouth. Wujida, ju'ila, kharaja, yukhrija, biyadika, yarithu. And don't say ya, don't say ye, say yeah, this sound, apple sound. Remember that. Yarithu, shajarata, ghashiya, ghain, ghashiya, sharaha, like this. And we try to say these letters with the middle of the tongue plus what is opposite in the roof of the mouth. In case of sheen, our tongue is touching the roof of the mouth, but not in case of ya and sheen. Now we come to the sides of the tongue or the edges of the tongue. Sometimes some people use one side, some people use both of the sides, some only use right, some only use left side for the letter dad. So what happens in case of dad, our deepest part of the side or the sides of the tongue touches the internal surface of the opposing molar. Because dad is a heavy letter, we will make our neck of the tongue up or elevated. So what is the name of the letter? The name of the letter is dad. We don't say dad, we don't circle our lips first and then say, we don't say dad, We say da, da. Remember the awesome sound? So we will say da, da, dod, dod, like this. Dod is the name of the letter. So let's try to practice and let's try to find the makhraj of the letter. We'll say al, al. So we will say qudiya, qudi. Both of them are heavy. Qudiya, ghadaba, ghadaba, a. This sound, a. So you don't say ghadaba, no. You say ghadaba. Now this one, maradu, maradu. In this case, because ra is heavy due to certain conditions, so we will say maradu. The sound is a, o, u, like this. Maradu. In case of lam, lam also comes with the sides of the tongue, and plus it also use a bit or end of the tip of the tongue. So the name of the letter is lam, and the makhraj we will try to find like this. Al, al. So what is happening here? We are using the nearest part of the sides of the tongue, not the deepest part like dod. The nearest part of the sides of the tongue and the tip of the tongue is also touching what is opposite in the roof of the mouth. In case of lam, because it is a light letter, we don't make our back of the tongue up. But sometimes when we have to make lam heavy, only at that point we will make the back of the tongue elevated. So let's practice some letters. Ru, sulu, rusulu, lu, lu. We don't say lu, lu. No, we say lu, lu. Don't make your back of the tongue up. In the lafzul jalala, the glorious name of Allah, we make the lam heavy when it comes into certain conditions. Now, because this is heavy, I will make my back of the tongue up and I will say Allah, Allah. Instead of saying Allah, no, I will not say that. I will say Allah, like this. And then zulima, Allah is heavy, lam is light, zulima, walada, wa, la, da, a, all of them are in this sound. Then we come to the tip of the tongue. The tip of the tongue is giving us the makhraj of noon. So in case of noon, we will say that noon is coming with the tip of the tongue, what is opposite in the top of the roof of the mouth, and the nasal sound that comes from the nasal passage is called gunna. So we cannot give the makhraj of letter noon without this gunna. So let's try to practice and try to find. The name of the letter is noon, noon, like this. And how do you say it? An. Let's try to practice it. Stretch the sound and try to see if you can find this makhraj yourself. An. Tip of the tongue is touching what is opposite in the roof of the mouth, and you are giving the nasal sound, the gunna, from the nose. Let's practice them. Noon is a light letter, so you will not make the back of the tongue up for this one. We will say udhuni, nufiho, nasiya. So na, not na. Na or ne, both of them are wrong. Na, nasiya, like an a, this sound. The tip of the tongue is also giving us the makhraj of these three letters. Letter za, also called as zay, or sin, or sod. Za, sin, sod. These three letters also coming from the tip of the tongue. Let's try to practice these letters and try to find their makhraj. So as, as, sod is a heavy letter, so back of the tongue is up. As. What is happening here? The end of the tip of the tongue is touching the lower part of the inner surface of the lower two incisors. So only for sod, your back of the tongue remains up, and that's why the heaviness comes with letter sod. Whether sod is having a fatha or a damma or a kasra, you will make sod heavy. Za, sin, sod, as, like this. We'll practice these words. Sadaqa, o, a, o, this sound. Sadaqa, hasada, all of them are with a sound. So we'll say hasada. Don't say hasa, no. Hasada. Z. See the buzz sound comes with Z, Z, Z. Za'ama. All of them are light. So we'll say this sound. Don't say za, no. Say za. Za'ama. Su. This is heavy. Back of the tongue goes up. Suhufu. Suhufu. Ha, fa. For both of them, back of the tongue goes down. Now let's practice this one. Seen is light. Qaf is heavy. But when kasra comes, the heaviness is at the lowest level. Ta is heavy. Suqi ta. Ta is heavy. Qaf is heavy. But with the kasra, it's the lowest heaviness. Seen is light. So don't say su. Say su. Suqi ta. Ta ziru. Ta ziru. Ta ziru. Now, in this case, remember for heavy letters, whether it's sa, the da, the ta, and la, especially for these letters, do not circle your lips first and then give the letter like this. Suad. No, don't say like this, because then you are putting dhamma before anything else. So in this case, if I say aswirata, no, this is wrong. Don't put a dhamma before giving a kasra, because the letter is having a kasra here. Say aswi, swi. Don't say swi. Don't say swa, swa. No, we say swi, swi with the kasra. Aswirata. Don't say ta. Aswirata. No. Aswirata. Aswirata. Do not circle your lips before giving the heavy letters. So we will say as-sirata like this. Rusulu, ruziqa, ruziqa, ruziqa. The tip of the tongue is also giving us the letter ra. So the letter ra we give from the tip of the tongue, plus a bit of the tip of the tongue is touching what is opposite in the roof of the mouth. But there is something to remember. Whenever we are giving ra, there is a small hole in the front of the tip of the tongue for running of the sound. The letter is ra. Let's try to find the makharij. Ar. Ar. If I say ar, so you will feel the tip of the tongue, you are touching with whatever is opposite in the roof of the mouth, but there is a small gap. If I'm not giving the gap properly, sound needs to go out. It will put the pressure at the tip of the tongue and the sound will become like this. Arr. If the hole is too big, the sound will become like this. Arr. Arr. So we don't need both of them. So we make a hole, but the hole should not be very big or very small. We just say arr. 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 For the letter ra, in certain conditions, ra is heavy. So in those conditions, when ra is heavy, you will make back of the tongue up. So for now, just remember when there is a fatha on ra or dhamma on ra, we will make ra heavy. When ra is having a kasra, we will make ra light. There are other places when we have to make ra heavy or light. We will learn them, inshallah. But for now, just remember these couple of points. Yarithu. Ra is light. We don't say ya ri. No. Ya ri thu. Ya ri thu. Duriba. Rubu'u. Now this ra is heavy, so back of the tongue is up. Ru. Don't say ru. Say ru. Rubu'u. Ghabaratu. Ra. Not ra. Not ra. Ghabaratu. Haramun. Ra. Don't say hara. It shouldn't be the same sound. So you should say ha, ra, haramun, like this. Tip of the tongue also gives us these three letters, which are ta, dal, and ta. The tip of the tongue is touching the soft area above the gum line of the upper two incisors where the roots are. So let's practice and find out. Let's practice it like this. Ad, out. I'm not doing kalkala for these letters, not bouncing them, just for you to learn where exactly your tongue is. So try to feel your tongue. Your tongue is actually not touching your teeth, because as soon as you touch your teeth, the sound will become like this. Ad. For dal, it will become ad. For ta, it will become at. So T and D, we don't have these sounds in Arabic letters. So we keep our tip of the tongue slightly behind our teeth at the gum, the soft area, the gum line of upper two incisors. There exactly we have to keep our tip of the tongue. Then we can find the letter ta and the dal and ta without using our teeth and without using the t and this sound. So for letter ta, because this is a heavy letter, do not circle your lips for letter ta. Do not say twa, say ta, ta. So for ta, letter ta, our back of the tongue is elevated and we keep it heavy. We will say these examples like this. Ha, ta, ba, ha, ta, ba. The sound is a, o, a in this sound. A, o, a, ha, ta, ba. So all these letters are light. We will say taba'a, taba'a, a. All these letters are light. So a, this sound. Now this one, walada. If I use my teeth, I will say walada, da. I don't have to say this. In this case, taba'a, if I'm using my teeth, the sound will become taba'a. No, I don't use my teeth for letter ta, dal, or ta. Keep your tip of the tongue slightly away from your teeth at the gum line of the upper two incisors. We say bati, batina, batina, kutubu, wajadu, aturi, abati, yadiya. So for all these letters, do not use your teeth. Keep your tip of the tongue slightly away from your teeth at the soft area of the gum line, and keep your back of the tongue up for letter ta, and don't circle your lips before giving the makharij of the letter ta. It is a ta, not a twa. It is a dal, not dal. It is a ta, not ta. For letters sa, dal, and tha, easy to remember that you bring your tip of the tongue out. That's the easy way to remember. But what exactly the makharaj is, the top of the tip of the tongue plus the bottom edges of the upper two incisors. What happens when you bring your tip of the tongue slightly out, your bottom edges of the upper two incisors, the top two teeth, touches your tip of the tongue. This is how the letter sa comes. Sa, dal, dha, not a dha, it's a dha. Let's try to find out the makharaj. As, al, as, al. What is happening? My top of the tip of the tongue is touching what? The bottom edges of the upper two incisors. So your tip of the tongue is slightly out and you can feel it. For letter dha, keep back of the tongue elevated, and let's try to practice these examples. Dhalama, o, a. This is the tone when you have to give these letters. Dhalama, samara. If I say samara, sa, this is seen. So you say sa, samara. Zakara, if I say zakara, za, this is letter zay or letter za. This is not a zal. So I have to make my tip of the tongue out. Zakara. So I will say yu'zima. Don't say lui, say yu'zima. Ba'atha, adhina, dhufuru, yarithu, dhukira. So sa, si, su, the, dhu, dha, the, dhu, like this. The letters which are coming from our lips. The first letter is letter fa. Let's try to practice the makhraj. F. Letter fa, not fa, not fe. Letter fa, a, this sound. So we try to find out the makhraj like F. So where exactly this is coming from? It's your tip of the top incisors are touching where? The inside of the lower lip. F. Because this is a light letter, you will not make your back of the tongue out. You will say nufiqa, ufuqi, fa'ala, fa. Don't say fa, fa'ala, say fa. So fa'ala. The ba, it's an easy way to remember that as soon as you close your lips, ab, the ba comes. Ab. I'm not doing qalqala, just to show you where the makhraj is. So I say ab. Closing of your two lips. So you don't say ba, so you say ba, a, apple sound. Labitha, rubu'u, kutiba, not kutiba, no, kutiba. Meme, exactly the same thing, closing of your two lips, just like ba. The only difference is you have to add gunna. Without gunna, the makhraj of meme cannot come. If you're not giving the gunna, so this is letter ba, this is not letter meme. So you have to use your nose for the nasal sound to give the meme properly. And you have to close your lips. If you're not closing your lips properly, the makhraj of meme cannot come. So we say you're closing your lips, you're giving the nasal sound from the gunna. Meme is a light letter, so you don't make your back of the tongue up. So you don't say ma, you say ma, this sound. Let's try to practice these words. Amira, muni'a, zulima, ma, not ma, zulima, no, zulima. Waw also comes from two lips. This waw is not a mud letter waw. This waw is when it is not a mud letter, when it is not in a mud condition. How does this waw comes? This waw comes from circling of the two lips without joining them. The name of the letter is letter wow. So we don't say wow. We don't use our teeth. We say wow. So we say it with circling of our lips and then a little bit of smile. Wow. Wow, like this. How will you find the makhraj? You say ow, ow. You're circling your lips without them meeting with each other. So let's practice this. Wujida. We don't say woo, wujida, woo. No, don't use your teeth. Wujida, wilada, waka'a, like this. So we have to make sure that we are not using our teeth for letter wow. Al-khayshum, the nose, is giving us the gunna for letter meme and noon. Gunna, the sound, which is coming from the nose, is a must part or a permanent attribute or a quality of two letters which are meme and noon. So makhraj of noon and meme is incomplete without the nasal sound. So we have to have the nasal sound to give the noon and meme properly. So the makhraj of noon and meme is incomplete without the nasal sound. Nose is not the makhraj of any letter, but the two letters noon and meme are incomplete without the nasal sound, which is this kind of sound, like this. So see, the nasal sound is coming. The nasal sound is coming. If I say I cannot even give that. So this is ba, not meme, if I'm not using my nasal sound or not give the gunna properly. Jamala, ainaban, kasamu, umamun, janafan, uduni. So in all these examples, whenever I'm giving meme and noon, I have to make sure that I am giving the nasal sound, which is coming from the nasal passage. We'll see these two pictures and try to summarize whatever we have studied so far, inshallah. So this one and this picture. To start from the bottom of the throat. So from the bottom of the throat, the letter comes which are Hamza and Ha. So when you come to the middle of the throat is giving Ain and Ha. Then you come a little bit forward and you see the top part of the throat, Ghain and Kha. So bottom of the throat, Hamza Ha. Middle of the throat, Ain Ha. Top of the throat, Ghain Kha. The moment Ghain and Kha finishes, Qaf comes, and after Qaf, you will find Kaf. The deepest part of the tongue is giving you Qaf, then slightly after Qaf, there is Kaf. Because we are talking about the deepest part of the tongue, the deepest part of the sides of the tongue is giving you Dot. The moment you reach to the middle of the tongue, the three letter comes Jim, Ya, and Shin. Jim, Ya, and Shin after Qaf and Kaf from the middle of the tongue. Then once the middle of the tongue finishes, the tip of the tongue comes. The tip of the tongue and the sides of the tongue, which side? The front side of the tongue is giving you Lam. In this case, if you see the sides of the tongue, the deepest part of the sides of the tongue is giving you Dot. The front part of the sides of the tongue is giving you Lam, plus Lam is also coming from the tip of the tongue. So Lam is using this part, the sides of the tongue from the front, plus the tip of the tongue. Also, tip of the tongue is giving you Noon and Ra. Tip of the tongue is just touching the soft area close to the lower two incisors. So this place, you are giving Za, Sin, and Sad. If your tip of the tongue is touching the soft area above the gum line of the upper two incisors. You're not touching the teeth. So which letter is coming? O, letter dal, and letter ta. This is coming. So let's go back to this picture now. Bottom of the throat, hamza ha. Middle of the throat, ha ain. Top of the throat, ghain kha. Then comes the deepest part of the tongue. Qaf and kaf comes. So now deepest part of the sides of the tongue giving you dad. Now you come to the middle of the tongue, which is giving you ya, sheen, and jeen. Now you come to the sides of the tongue, which is at the front and not at the deepest part. So this is giving you lam. Lam is also coming from the tip of the tongue, using some tip of the tongue. Noon and ra also using tip of the tongue. Now, if your tip of the tongue goes to the lower incisors and touch the soft area, you are giving seen, sod, and za. The same tip of the tongue, if it is touching gum line of the upper two incisors, you are giving ta, dal, and ta. Now bring your tip of the tongue out. The moment it comes out, then at that time, when your tip of the tongue comes out and it is touching the bottom edges of the upper two incisors, you are giving fa, dal, and dha. And we will see it here. Your tip of the tongue is out. Now you are done with the tip of the tongue letters and you give the letters from the lips. So letters from the lips that comes with the ba, when you join them both, comes when you give fa, the inside of the lower lips plus the tip of the two upper two incisors, you are giving fa. Now you are giving, by circling your two lips, you are giving wow. By closing or meeting with two lips with the hunna, the nasal sound, you are giving me. This is how you can practice your letters and your makharij. The jawf letters are coming alif mad, ya mad, and waw mad, coming from the empty space of mouth and throat. U, e, this sound. And the sound, the hunna, is coming from the nasal sound, and it will give you the proper makharij of letter meen and noon. Inshallah, this way we can learn our makharij. And I hope these things are clear to you. Inshallah, we will end our lesson here and we will continue with the next topic in our next class. Jazakum Allah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.